Hey everybody, this is Megan Shui with Unleashed, and I have the pleasure of having Laura Bush here with me today on Unleashed Business Confessions. And we're going to learn today about Laura and her business and her ups and downs
Yeah.
and stories of the good, bad, ugly, funny, and exhilarating of starting a business. So welcome, Laura. Thanks so much for being here. Why don't you start telling us about you and your business?
All right. Well, my name is Laura Bush, and you do have that right. I think of myself as the Laura Bush.
You are the Laura Bush.
Yes, the Laura Bush. And I help business owners, experts, thought leaders write nonfiction books that get them greater visibility, build their brand, and if they'd like to become speakers, get them that kind of opportunity as well because they have a book. And a book will also create multiple streams of revenue. I do that in several different ways with people. I work with them either as a ghostwriter. I'm a private writing coach. I do both private coaching, writing coaching, and group coaching. And I'm also an editor. So I can help people finish their book. And that's the goal, right? In several different ways, depending on what they want, how they want to invest in it, how much time they have to do the actual writing themselves, or if they just want to hire me and do the heavy lifting. So that's what I do. That's what the main thing that I do in my business now.
Wow. And you, I read that you have a PhD in English. Is that right?
Yes.
So you came from academia. How in the world did you
I
come
did.
from that world and end up here, online business building, working with entrepreneurs?
Well, sometimes I wonder why I did that. But essentially, I got my first faculty member job when I was 26. I had my master's degree and I started teaching at a private junior college in Idaho, actually. It was my first. I was a faculty member, very exciting. And then I did that for a while and decided to go back for my PhD here in Phoenix at Arizona State University. And so I've actually been at the university teaching English or teaching teachers how to teach online for over about 20 years. And then in 2012, I kind of became tired of the bureaucracy of the university. And also it was very difficult because I could never make any more money than I was making. Mm-hmm. And it had taken me quite a while just to get a barely middle income salary, which is very frustrating to a person when I see that my students are making more money than I am. And I have a PhD in English, 20 years of experience, very frustrating. And so many people had encouraged me to think about starting a business. And so that's what I did in 2012. I jumped off the face of the earth and we're into the Grand Canyon.
It feels like it, doesn't it?
It did. And I thought I had all sorts of things. I was very naive, actually, about.
Tell me more about that. What do you think you were naive about looking back? It's always hindsight's 2020.
Yeah.
It's always easy to say,
yeah.
I should have or could have. But what do you think if you really kind of were naive about?
I was naive about how long it was really going to take to develop a clientele, because I'd had people say, I would hire you. And I did have some people. And I had also had an assurance from a current employer that they were interested in doing some contract work with me and that I would have as much as $30,000 worth over, so there's a kind of transition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that was my first lesson. That was my first naivete. Is that I had not signed a contract. And what I know now, after 3 years of business, four, it's 2016. If you haven't signed a contract with someone and they haven't given you a down payment, it's not real. And you should not count on it for your bread and butter.
Say a verbal contract is as good as the paper it's signed on or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. I haven't heard that, but that is very true. Yeah. So I was naive about how long it would take to really develop a clientele to support me. I was, I think, a little bit Pollyannish about everything will kind of work its way out, even though I had a lot of fears and concerns. It was scary. It was the scariest thing I'd ever done in my life because I'd always had a very solid salary and benefits and,
well, the whole world of academia is charted out for you. You know that
Exactly.
you get a bachelor's, then you get a master's.
Yep.
And then if you're crazy enough, you go on to get a PhD.
Exactly.
And then you go on to, and then you enter into the
Yeah.
kind of the faculty track,
Yep.
and then it's all laid out for you.
Right, right. Yeah. And it is, and it's very, it's pretty dependable. I had a very solid, I wasn't going to be going anywhere unless I asked to go somewhere, or, but as I say, I also was tired of grading papers. That gets very old after a while, taking papers home to grade. And I had made some shifts horizontally to avoid some of that. Like I got into faculty development, as I said, and I really enjoyed that. And I still loved teaching my students. I still love working with people on their writing. It's just that when you have an enormous number of students and they're online and you're having to give them that much feedback, it's not the kind of experience that I have now of working with people on their writing, because I can work on them one-on-one. Even in a small group setting, it's so much more reasonable, and I really feel like I can actually impact people's writing for the good. Whereas when I was doing it with so many people, it's much more difficult to help them really learn how to write and think, because writing is thinking. So
that is so true. So when you first started, so you said that you thought you had $30,000 in contracts, and then you wake up the day after you put in your resignation and you're feeling like you got the world at your feet, and you realize you don't have this. What did you do?
I cried. I did. And I felt sorry for myself in a bit. And then I just started pounding the streets as it goes. Mostly my first clients and some of my best clients have actually been people that I knew. And so I started to work my network and those closest to me. And I actually early on had two solid small business clients. They were both financial advisors, interestingly enough, one on the right politically and one on the left politically. So that was really interesting.
And to write for either of those two.
Yes, it was very, very different. And so I really loved doing that. And then I got some book writing clients and did some ghost writing. And so, people referred to me, and that worked out really well. And then pretty soon I got some freelancing work as a copywriter on websites for nonprofit organizations. I hooked up with a woman who had her own business, digital marketing agency, and I began writing for her and loved it. It was very complex work. These were larger nonprofit organizations, well established. And so I had the opportunity to not only do something that I love, and that is work with nonprofit organizations, but do writing. And I didn't have to justify my edits or anything, which is when you're grading papers, you're always having to say why you suggest a change. This, I could just take all that. I scraped all the copy, put it into a document.
You were free.
I was free. And I loved that. And I did do about nine large websites.
Wow.
I wrote the copy. And that kept me with a fairly steady income while I also went through some pretty challenging health problems, which also descended on me in the midst of all this. So that kept me afloat for a while. And then I was laid off from that agency. I had gone on full time and thought that was going to be my future. I was really in love with that business and kind of was shutting my own down. And then suddenly the work had dried up. So that was really discouraging, frustrating, a little bit disillusioning, and another kind of bonk between the eyes. Being out there away from the university, it's not as safe and cushy. Like, you can make more money, but the highs and lows are much bigger. So
yeah, and I think that's a really interesting point, because that in academia there is such a security that there's a safety net in some ways, where even if you don't like teaching this class, there's another class to teach. There's and entrepreneurship certainly there's nothing safe about entrepreneurship,
No.
unfortunately.
And I grew up with a mother who had a business.
Okay.
She actually owned a beauty shop, and she was able to be the mother of twins. I'm an identical twin.
Oh.
I have a younger sister and an older brother because she put the business in her backyard, essentially. And she had about 10 to 12 hairdressers. And I knew that the business was our bread and butter. We had a large retail business. I dusted a lot of retail, did a 40% markup on all of those things. But I wasn't in love with my mom's business. And in fact, I, sometimes resented the business because she was always at the business. So I kind of I'm never going to have a business. And I was like that until, only relatively recently. And now I have a complete high regard for what my mother accomplished. She was 19 years old. She only was a cosmetologist, no business experience, no business training at a time when women also didn't necessarily do that. This was in a small town, Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And she made it. She made it a loan from my uncle. The bank wouldn't give her a loan.
No, they probably wouldn't give her a loan because she was a woman.
Yeah, that was another thing I found out, that once I didn't have a salary, I couldn't get loans. And I had always and have always had a high credit rating. So that's another thing that you lose as an entrepreneur, but you gain so much freedom.
Yeah. That's one of the things that I try to help people anticipate for is if you're going to quit your job and you need at least 2 years of tax returns a lot of times before a bank will even look at you as a serious business owner. So buy the car, buy whatever you need before you quit. Yeah. Because otherwise but I want to know more about, is your mom still alive?
She is. Yep. She's.
What does she think of your?
She's excited about it. I mean, she's happy about it because it also allows me, I do all my business virtually, which is one reason that I did this also, because I saw the opportunity that the internet was. I saw, and it's even gotten better over time. So I can go home and take care of her or be with her, and I can still do my work. I don't have to, she lives, at least 20 hours away. If I'm just driving, and so I can do that. So she's proud of me. She has some concerns, of course, about it, but now she's at a point in her life. Well, Laura, you want to do it? Go for it. And I think the most important thing for her is that I actually, and I hope she knows this, that I have a much better understanding of what she accomplished as a women business owner. As someone who hadn't been trained, the clientele that she built, the employees that she gave jobs to, and my father was by her side in one sense, but he was a heavy construction worker. He was fixing things on weekends, plowing us out, but he was not running the business. My mother was running the business. And so she is a pretty impressive person. And now I really I took what I took for granted, like the fear of, am I going to be able to pay my bills? Am I going to be able to pay my employees? Well, I didn't know she was going through that.
I was going to say, did she hide that from you? Was she pretty good or just didn't see it?
I think I got old enough that she was doing well enough that she didn't have to be overly fearful. She was happy. She was thrilled to be doing what she was doing. But I still bet that she had concerns, and that's why she was working, and she did all the bookkeeping at night. She did the cleaning, and she hired some babysitters, sometimes some cleaning help, but she was kind of a one-woman show.
What a motivation.
Yeah.
What a motivational person and role model for you. Yeah. But I can also see how kind of the pros and the cons of starting a business then, but yet I really am convinced that entrepreneurship runs in families very deeply. and so I'm not surprised at all that you took the leap yourself.
Yeah.
And happy Leap Day, by the way.
Oh, yes, thank you. I didn't even think of that.
Day.
True. Yeah. It is Leap Day. So this is
my favorite day because it's I think entrepreneurs always have to take the leap, and there's many leaps, even daily. There are leaps that we have to take that we're not sure where we're going or what we're doing, but
for sure. And I think that's why a lot of people don't do it. And I think a lot of people stay in jobs that they're not happy with because they either have golden handcuffs, which I didn't really experience, or I had more golden than I thought I did.
Yeah,
still, it didn't seem all that golden. Now that I look back on what I had, but I think a lot of people are not courageous enough to leave, and they stay in jobs that they're not happy with because at least it's a stable income and they can rely on it. And there is a lot more risk in this business, but there's a lot more potential for reward also. So it's a balance, what you're willing to do.
It's a gamble. I always say it's such a gamble to do this, because it really is. It can pay off big, and it can
crash.
Put you. Yeah, it can absolutely crash.
Yeah.
So I love what you do, and I'm really curious because on my bucket list is definitely writing a book someday. And it's becoming clearer and clearer what that book should probably be about. So when you work with somebody, how do you get started? First of all, how do you know someone's actually serious and is going to finish it? Probably because they hired you. Otherwise they wouldn't, But what else? What are the other kinds of signs and symptoms of a real author?
That's very interesting. I've never been asked that question. I think that what you actually said is true. It's the person who actually is willing to put money, invest in it and in themselves, that demonstrates that they're really committed, because if they aren't, then they're just not ready. So the money and the investment in somebody like me, many people don't know about something like a writing coach. They might have heard about ghostwriters. That is someone who writes the book for you. So you're the author of it. You're the expert, the one that I'm talking to get the material and information, but you're not doing all the actual writing. But I don't think that people are as aware that there are such things as writing coaches. So I think the signs are that people say, I want to write a book. I've always wanted to write a book. Or they've said, I've started writing my book and then I stopped. Lots of false starts with authors and business owners. Or they said they've heard, often business leaders or business people such as yourself will say, I know that this could make a difference for me, that it could differentiate me from my competition, because it demonstrates that you're an expert. You have to be able to write a book, and you have the evidence for it or not. So, if you're an expert, and then I think ultimately that's why I exist, is to actually help people write a book, because it is a longer writing task and it can be daunting. It is like at least a half marathon, I say to people. I don't want to, intimidate them too much and say, this is a marathon you're putting yourself into. And so you wouldn't want to go it alone. People who go it alone usually don't finish, or the quality of the book will not be as good. And so, it's very satisfying for me, especially to meet someone such as yourself who has been working in a field for quite a while, and you're at that point of, like, you have something to share and contribute to other people like you, or who are coming up behind you. And I get to help you think through how to start that book, how to structure it. And then I have partners in publishing and promotion that I've vetted, that I recommend you use to get published and to get visibility, because many people can write a book and then never be seen, never be read.
Yeah, I was just going to say, actually, Brene Brown talks about that in her book, Rising Strong. Have you read that book yet?
I haven't read that one, but I know Brene Brown.
Well, she's just like one of my favorites. And she talks about how she wrote a book and no one would publish it. So she published it herself, and she drove around with it in her back, in her trunk, and sold it out of her trunk. And people started using, professors started using it in some of her classes, but then they found out that she had self-published, and then they wouldn't use it anymore because there's kind of that air of self-publishment, especially she was in academia, so it's totally
very
different. Kind of, that's a whole different ballgame. But she also talked about how she thought that even when she got the book deal, because she got a book deal and she thought it was going to be all great. And I think this was before her TED Talk, that she set out to, she bought the clothes, she got her hair done. The day before the book was going to be released, and then it was released, and it was just crickets. And she didn't realize how much she was going to have to do to help promote her own book. And it isn't just the publishing house that's going to set it all up and do it all until you're probably a big star.
I had the same experience with my academic book. I got to be part of a lot of the designing process too, which was exciting and a little bit unusual. But then I was shocked when they were saying, okay, now it's published, now it's printed. Now give us your email list of friends and family, and then tell us where you want us to show up with books. And I'm like, really? So I went to my hometown because there was good reason to do there. It's a book about women's autobiography, and I went to the bookstore and called up the bookstore, and I called up Changing Hands and got a reading here. Changing Hands is a wonderful local bookstore, and I felt very privileged and honored to get to do a book reading and book signing there. But yeah, even in the traditional publishing world, you have to do a lot of marketing yourself. And publishing has changed quite a bit over the last 10 years, and the view of self-publishing. Yes, in the academy, there's still a bias against self-publishing and an assumption that that's an inferior way to get your message out or your word out because it doesn't have to be vetted. But if you go with what I call independent publishers or hybrid publishers, there's kind of a range of publishing that's happening. The traditional publishing over here, where you give up all of your intellectual property rights and you only get like 8 to 15% on your book. And then there's the Create Space, Book Baby over here, which is essentially DIY, do it yourself. Here's your templates. And then there's this middle ground, which what I recommend people. If you're really serious and you want to be seen, there are a number of book publishers that give you help with marketing and promoting, help you design the book, help you market and promote it, because they're essentially your joint venture partner. So they're invested in you making money as much as you are, because it's their money too. Even though you're paying them to publish your book, it's their business, and they need and want you to be successful. And they have particular professional experience that can help you know how to market, know how to publish, even know how to design the book, organize it and such so that it's a really high quality product. Because that's what it is. It's just another product and way of getting visibility.
What an interesting business model, and what a changing I mean, it just and you're really, it seems to me, on the forefront of it, being considerably online, finding clients online, and then helping to distribute using social channels. And I've seen some of your social media and posts where you've been at book signings and all sorts of things that are really exciting. So I think it sounds like such an interesting time to be in this industry it's shifting, really.
And people, I think, have a notion that maybe books are going away, but I don't think they are. People really like, especially if it's a guidebook, like if you were to write your business book, people want to have that in their hand. Yes, I can get it electronically, but it's like there's something about having a guidebook, especially something that's giving you advice, self-help, that people want an actual copy of. I know that there are probably many people who do have their Nook or their Kindle. I've never gotten one myself, and I don't overbuy books anymore because I have so many books but those kinds of books, they're still in fashion. They're still sought after, and they still establish you as an expert. That will do more for you because most people don't have the stick-to-itiveness to finish a book, quite frankly.
Mm-hmm.
There was a publishing house, I can't remember, it was in Michigan or Minnesota, and they did they did a survey of like 1,000 people, and 80% of those people said they have a book in them. Then there's and so lots of people feel that they have a book in them,
mm-hmm.
even a legacy book, which is another type of book that I help people write. My expertise is actually in autobiography. I studied how people wrote about themselves. But so 80% of people, even if that's, just close to the number of people, want to write a book. But then the writing practice, which is another business that's helped people write, the one thing, they did a survey of their writers and said, what really do you struggle with in your writing? And 76% of them said finishing a book.
Mm.
So I really encourage people to at least get a writing partner or a writing group. If you don't hire somebody, which is the most fail-safe way of getting your book finished, at least have someone that's going to hold you accountable, that's going to support you, hand you Gatorade as you're trudging along, with the book. So.
And what do you run any of those kinds of writer groups, or are your groups kind of all around, you're the expert and you kind of give the advice? How do you do your groups, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I just started doing groups. I've actually only been doing one-on-one work for the most part, and I've just started my first online group. I use a web conferencing software that I love, and I am the expert, but the people who are in the group, there were 8 to start out, and they did the book promotion part, and then we've gotten to the writing coaching, and there are 6 of them. So I give them feedback on their writing. We meet for 2 hours once a week virtually. Wow. Everybody can be seen. I choose 3 to 4 of the group to focus on, and I call it also just-in-time learning, using it so that I'm not teaching necessarily writing concepts. I'm looking at everybody's writing in the group, seeing what their common strengths or weaknesses are, and then addressing those issues on each call so that they get just in time what they need. So
that's so great, because then they can go back and keep writing, and they don't have to wait to be done.
Exactly.
And be finished.
And they're getting to know what I'm sharing with them as what they need in their writing at that moment. So I talk about moving up and down the ladder of abstraction, and I tell them exactly what that means, and many of them are doing it. That is, they're becoming more concrete and specific versus general and abstract, and why that's working in one of their writings. So they'll get to see it demonstrated, both working and not working, and then they'll be able to take that on.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that is amazing. I think the sun just came in here.
I'm like, you're either that or God and all his angels have descended on you. Yeah.
But better.
Yeah. Well, not quite yet.
No, it's not. I turned off the light. I don't. This is crazy. I'm. Is that better? So I want to know more about how women write autobiographies. I'm fascinated by that.
Well, they write them in all sorts of ways. One of the things that I tell people about autobiographical writing, and this is true for women, but one of the big generalizations, this is a real generalization, but especially early women's writing, they were writing about private matters much more than men's autobiographies. So the tradition of autobiography has been Benjamin Franklin, public figure, writing about his public life and hardly ever talking about his wife, his children, what happened at home. Whereas if his wife had been writing an autobiography, she would have been, because she was in the home. And but that kind of activity was not as valued either. So the kinds of autobiographies that initially got attention, and autobiography goes way, way back, but I'm talking about American autobiography. One of the general kind of splits would be the difference between public figures writing about their public life and not writing about their private life. Now, Barack Obama's autobiography does both. So you can see him come into the 20th century, the 21st century. So, but the tradition was for men, they wouldn't have talked about that, and women would have, because, of course, not only because they were domestic, and not all of them were, but white privileged women were at home, and letter writing also. But in the field of autobiography, we actually refer to it as life writing, because it can work in many ways. So that, when you ask me the difference between those, I would say women tend to write a bit more about their private life, or are willing to, but that's a generalization. But you can see that they're writing about Maya Angelou, wrote about abuse, many abuse survivors, and so those become very private kinds of expressions. But the one thing about autobiography that people may not immediately understand or know is that you can't tell everything about your life. You can't possibly do it. You have to select particular stories, and for particular reasons. So autobiography, I talk about it as much as a persuasive piece of writing as any other tract. So you're writing for people to believe something about you. And so you're putting particular stories forward and not telling other stories, because either they're unrelated, they're not that important, they weren't pivotal, or you just don't want to tell that part of your life. So you're selecting and deselecting as an autobiography, as an autobiographer. And one of my jobs as a literary critic is to see how and why you selected or deselected, and how you are rhetorically putting together your autobiography. Now, that's probably a lot more theory than most people really care about, but the whole truth nature of autobiographies, you can't remember everything absolutely exactly. And to bring a story alive is to use dialogue. And sometimes, there are key phrases that you remember that stick with you. But if you want to create a scene in your autobiography and you want people to be talking to them, they're going to be making up dialogue. It's not going to be the absolute accurate truth of that. So those are some things that I talk with people about autobiography. And then some of the things that get in the way of people actually writing an autobiography is that they're not just telling the story of their life, they're telling the story of other people's lives, and other people don't necessarily like that. I actually had a person drop out of my first group course because family members did not want her writing about what she wanted to write about. And it was causing a lot of tension, and she had put the money down and she was really excited about it, and she pulled out. And that happens with autobiography.
I can see that. My dad is a prolific writer, and he hasn't published anything yet, but he's working on publishing kind of they're just stories. He says he doesn't want to call them memoirs or autobiography or anything, and he's writing one right now, and it's the only one my mom is in, or kind of like a caricature of her, I guess. And she's not at all happy about this. I mean, she's not. She's like, of all the things, now I'm going. The one story you write about me, I'm going to look like a doofus or something. So I can see how that can happen.
Well, and there's strategies, and I actually am going to be running my own interview series with some experts who teach people creative nonfiction writing, who have worked with people on telling their stories and dealt with those issues. And so there are some strategies for getting around that, having people, changing people's names, changing things slightly so that it gets the essence of it, but not so that, you can be discreet with people, or getting their permission, having them look at it, just the way that you write. But that's the challenge of real life, telling real life stories, is it's not just about you, it's about other people, because we're all in conversation and relationship to other people. We don't live our lives singly and solely alone. So
sometimes, unfortunately. So what, you've been doing this for several years, and you must have kind of come across some words of wisdom, or kind of thought of some of yourself. What advice would you give somebody who's just starting out? First of all, I'd like you to answer this twice. First of all, just starting out in business, just in general. And second, starting out and they want to write a book. So could you answer that in two different questions?
Okay. I can do that. My advice for people just starting out with a business is similar to my advice actually of starting a book. And that is, I think that I would have done myself very well to get a business coach such as yourself or someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And there are ways to also find people. So you want to not go it alone, to get someone who has at least gone before you a bit. Now, I actually participated in an entrepreneurial training program that was very helpful because it also gave me a kind of support group. And there were so many things that I hadn't even thought of, even though I grew up in a business, thought I knew everything. I mean, I have a PhD in English, for goodness
Right,
sakes.
you got it covered.
I got that covered. I needed support. And when I was in those frightening times, it was so good to have people who were also at a similar stage in their business, because this was a cohort group, a local group through the Black Chamber of Arizona, actually, and Maricopa Community College's small business. And there are many of those in communities, and they are low cost or no cost. Mm-hmm. So I would definitely find people in your life to give you some coaching and support, because you will need it at many. Mm-hmm. And there were times that I spent some money that I wouldn't have spent, I think, if I had a coach to say, no, that's
to talk things through,
to prioritize and things like that. The same thing with starting a book. I actually have created a free gift that anybody can get from me. I will have it on my website. I don't have it up quite yet, but because I just finished it, I'm going to be part of a summit of book writers and publishers coming up towards March. But it's called 90 Days to Write a Profitable Book. And so I actually have a plan for you, how to start. And my first step is get support. Get a writing partner, a group, and don't skip this step. And then I go on to explain how you content dump and organize it, and then how you can pace your own self through a 90-day book writing. You can get a book written in 90 days if you keep to the daily schedule that I suggest in this freebie. So if anybody emails me at laura@laurabushphd.com, happy to send them a copy of that.
So it's Laura.
Yeah, Laura.
I'm going to type it down here. I like it. Yeah. The sun is so bright. I live in Minnesota. And it's not very often in
this kind of in the winter. Yeah, it is unusual.
LauraBushPhD.com, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Laura@laurabushphd.com, and just say, I want that free gift for writing a profitable book in 90 days, and I'm happy to send it to anyone.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And so that's kind of my advice. I'm sorry to talk over you.
That's great. No, that's great advice, both of them. Mm-hmm. I think getting support is a good answer for either one of them. And you just don't know what you don't know. And it's when you start a business, it can just be so lonely. And you have a good idea, and there's no, your dogs probably aren't super interested in thinking through that with you.
They can give me comfort while I'm sitting there going like, call this person, or but no, they can't help me like a real person can.
Yeah. So where can people find you? So we got your website is laurabushphd.com.
Mm-hmm.
Where else?
And that's my handle also on Twitter, Laura Bush PhD. Facebook, if you look up, I'm on Facebook. I do have an Instagram account, but it doesn't work for me. But Facebook, and I'm on LinkedIn. So you can find out more about me. And I do, you can go LinkedIn /in, and then my name, Laura Bush.
Okay.
I think it's just
I'll put that in the blog too, because I haven't been asking about LinkedIn, getting people in, but that's a really good.
Yeah, I've been working to develop a presence on LinkedIn for sure, and that's actually what I would suggest, because I think that LinkedIn is the next best thing for entrepreneurs and business owners. I'm beginning to use their posting features. I think it's really actually very good. You can get a lot of visibility that way, and as a writer, I want to get my writing out there to help other people write. I just posted a new. And I use it on my blog too. I'm trying to decide what I want to do that way, whether I want to just put a link in the post. It doesn't look as good to drive people to my website, or or what?
I know, and I don't know. There's all
There's
sorts of
no
different
magic.
experts that,
Hmm.
yeah, there's no magic, and I think you just try it many ways
Yeah,
and
yeah.
see what works.
Hmm.
But so, do you have any questions for me, or need any information from me today before we go?
I would like to know from you. There are a couple of things because I have watched you and thought, oh my goodness, Megan knows what she's about. And I love
Except for lighting.
what you're,
There we
yeah,
go.
except for lighting.
Okay, now you can see how my junk.
I actually have two questions for you. I would like to know how you would suggest people go about finding a good business coach. Now, I would personally recommend people check your business coaching out. I do have a business coach now, and I found her because I was in an event, and she was actually going to be my roommate, and I found out about her and did some more research about her, and then I talked with her and she talked with me, and I hummed and hawed and hawed about it. But I want to know from you, other than the fact that I think that you do a great job for people, what would you suggest for people when they're looking for a business coach? What do you look for in a good business coach, do you think? Besides, I think one thing is that they're ahead of you, and that they've actually made money. They've actually been successful. And then I'm going to remember my other question after you answer that one.
Okay. I think that finding a business coach has a couple different elements to it. And one is absolutely what stage are you in? You want somebody who's ahead of you, who's kind of been through it. I don't know that it's vital that they've actually done the business that you're doing. I don't think that's necessarily vital because business is a lot of theory and a lot of tools and techniques that can work in a lot of different ways. Yep. So it isn't just this person is this type of coach. This is the kind of coach I want to be. Therefore, I need to work with this person. I think personality plays a huge part in it. I know that there are business coaches that push people and will shame them into, you have to do it this way. You have to do it the way I did it. You're not going to be successful unless you do it my way. And that is so not me. I can't even imagine, making someone feel that way. So I think style is also another way that the style that you're attracted to. I probably am more kind of more of an academic business coach. I have a master's degree in organizational leadership, and my bachelor's degree is in small business management and entrepreneurship. And so I kind of I kind of use the tools that I've learned and then in theory, and then help you put them into practice. So I think that there's lots of different ways that you can find a business coach. I would say that if you're going to find a business coach, see if you can find one that aligns with your values. Because there are business coaches out there that say that they've made $60,000 in 10 minutes, and and you can do it too.
Some of those, yeah.
Yeah, and good for them if they've done it. I mean, absolutely. But if in my experience, money is not the only reason that people go into business. A lot of times, I know one that, in order to make $60,000, should invest $8,000 in Facebook ads.
Yeah.
Well, unless you have $8,000 sitting in your bank account, or you take out a loan, and the bank is going to have a little bit of a hard time telling you yes on a loan for Facebook ads for $8,000. I think that's kind of the key. And to find someone that you just really think gets you. Because that's really the part where whenever I've talked to people who've had business coaches that they say, do I have to do it this way? This is the way they told me I have to do it. And I don't. And I was like, hell no, you can do it the way you want to. That's the beauty of having a business. And if you get the wrong business coach, sometimes it can feel like they become your boss. And that is not at all the way that I would ever want any of my clients to feel when they're working with me. I can be bossy. I am not your boss. But I think that's kind of my where you find them. I mean, in terms of location, my gosh, I love that you found yours at an event, because you got to meet her and really feel that connection. but online it's more difficult because it's much more noisy,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of kind of things coming your way, and everyone's got a freebie, and everyone's got a
Yep.
perspective and a point of view and a kind of a marketing theory. And what you're seeing, let's just remember that what you're seeing on the outside is the marketing package.
Yeah.
And you don't always know what's inside of that marketing package until you bite.
Sample.
And so if you can, so if you can find a way to sample, I guess, if you can find a way to learn more about that person where it's not inside of a marketing bubble, I think that's really helpful too.
Well, and I just have to say, I can't remember what my other question was, darn it. But
Right.
I have to say that what I have admired about you, and the reason that I've continued to follow you, even though I haven't yet invested in you, Megan, invested in having you be a business coach,
Sure.
that I would recommend you, is that you've done a really nice job of staying visible to me. You created a Facebook community that somehow I became a part of. You invited me to be part of that. And then you've been very welcoming, and there are some groups that are not as inviting, and there's these rules you have to follow, and or people aren't really interacting with each other, so it doesn't really help, or there's no value in it. But I've found some value, great value, just even in watching you do what you do.
Thank you.
So I'm like, I need to do more of that, because I think business owners don't really understand too. One of the things that my business coach has taught me is that the fortune is in the follow-up, and that it takes between 4 and 7 touches with someone before they may actually even begin to think about hiring you, because they have a right to find out if you're the real deal, or they're distracted, or whatever it is. So the business owner who will win is the one who's persistent. I just recently got a ghostwriting client who I have literally been touching since October, and there was a point at which, and I know this is true for small business owners, because it's hard to have someone not return your email or not return your call. And they said they wanted to talk with you, but then it's crickets. So it takes something to follow up with those people, right? But it finally paid off for me. And I literally, I had to have touches with her, touches with friends, many different touches to actually land that client. And what I see you doing is keeping yourself visible in social media, giving people, some free advice, value added for nothing, so that you actually are enabling people to sample your wares. And when I got to go to that one, I think it was a blab, you did just a 30-minute thing on budgets, or it wasn't budget, but it was a spreadsheet.
Oh yeah, a
webinar for, but what was it? It was some financial thing, which is never my
cash flow projection.
Cash flow projection, that kind of term. Just
I know. Don't throw up.
Don't throw up. Don't seize up is what I do. Cash flow projections, profit loss report. But I was like, oh my gosh, Megan is the one that I wish that I would have had when I started my business, because I was actually with people who were way ahead of me, and I have to say men, and I know that sounds like yes, it's a kind of slam on them. But the way that they were teaching me cash flow projection or profit and loss, I was just like glazed over. I don't get it. And it was, it wasn't a class. It wasn't a 16-week course. So I didn't have a lot of time to learn something. But I actually learned something from you. And it didn't seem as intimidating to me. And I think that's unfortunate that we have created accounting and business cash flow projections or anything that they're somehow intimidating. I don't think they have to be. You just need someone to invest time in you, and you need to have an actual business. I think that makes when it's not theoretical,
right?
It's
when it's real.
But I still,
all accounting is, that's the thing that I think that's so interesting is I took accounting in high school or in college and was miserable.
Yeah.
And then I started doing books for my mom. She was a consultant, and I started doing her books on. I loved the computer. I loved it from. I'm I'm old enough to remember not having one.
Oh, yep, me too.
And I loved the computer, and I loved learning new programs, and QuickBooks was a program I wanted to learn. It had nothing to do with accounting. And so I really learned accounting by actually practicing it. And I think that's what made me know how to teach it.
Yep.
And it's all accounting is adding and subtraction. I mean, it's putting it in one column or another, into one account or another.
Yeah.
But we've made it so scary with ratios and
accrual versus cash.
Yeah, all these different terms and things that most small businesses, 90% of the small businesses, 50 employees or less, they don't need a lot of that. So to me, that's what's fun about teaching that, is that I can break it down. And I'm glad that you found value in that, because I hope that I can break it down and make it feel like not only do I understand this, but I can now use this tool to make a stronger business and to create a stronger business.
And Megan, what I would say about that is, because I actually am an instructional designer also, that was another one of my lives. And I taught teachers how to teach new faculty members at the university. And I thought to myself, as I was watching you teach, I said, I want you to know, you are a very good teacher. You can anticipate your students' needs. You don't talk over them. You create it in such a way that it's a non-threatening environment. But also, I think that is a good teacher can be an expert at something, but make it understandable for non-experts. The problem is a lot of experts just really don't understand how to talk to non-experts. And that's the problem. Either that or they just don't want to. Because it takes some more time. It takes patience to help people get to your Max Gladwell's 10,000 expert hours, of doing something. And so when you're working with someone who is a beginner or a startup, and they're very unfamiliar with those things, sometimes I just think that people are impatient with them. And I just need you to slow down with that. I mean, I could write 2,000 words in 5 minutes, but to ask me to figure out my cash accrual different, I don't know, that isn't even a thing, I know, but it's just not my favorite part of the business. And what I want to do is get to the point, and I'm almost there. I have a bookkeeper who's also an accountant and a neighbor, which is incredibly serendipitous, because she can come over and she is training me to use, and I've learned to use my QuickBooks and all the online version, and I feel so empowered about it. But I'm hoping to make enough money at some point to just pay somebody to do my bookkeeping.
Oh, me too.
Because it's
absolutely
things that aren't your expertise, right? That's another thing we know as business owners.
Or what you love. I can absolutely use QuickBooks. I can do accounting, all day long. But that is not what I love, and what I think my best use is. My best use is teaching other people how to use things.
So that's what you love.
I think. That's what I love to do.
Yeah.
At my heart, I think I am a teacher. I think you definitely call it out.
I definitely think that you should write your book, because I think that whatever that is about business and such, you truly do and will have a way of speaking to people from a different direction to help them understand. I don't know, what do you have in mind? Basic business principles? Are you, what would your book be about? Do you know?
It's a good question. I think that what I would love to do is to kind of do what we're talking about, which is to break down these principles into common sense, so that anybody who, my love are really people who are just getting started and really need kind of the basics and don't want to, most business books are really businessy, and they're thick and heavy and thick, and they're boring, and the stories they tell are mostly stories of men. P.S. So I think that's one of the things that I would like to do, is to write a book about, and then being a beautiful stereotypically beautiful woman.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think there's something about that you don't have to look like some of these women do who become famous or
Marie
whatever.
Forleo and be
Yeah, you know, Marie Forleo, hip hop instructor. I am not that.
No, but you look great. And Marie Forleo is intimidating to me with her perfect hair.
Yeah.
And I have been in B school, and it was valuable. I paid for B school. That was one of those things that I tried. And I think she gives all sorts of great advice, but she's incredibly intimidating. You know, she's it all together, it looks like, and she's very, very styled. So I think,
and she appeals to that market.
Yes,
absolutely.
She does. And I think that you do have a realness about you that that's what I've learned. Coaches attract the people that need and want their services or their style, and have them feel comfortable and give them confidence, you know. And so I think that you have a book definitely to write that would be of value to other people. And it would be of value to you, because you would organize your own thoughts.
I think you're absolutely right. And you know, I'm writing courses now for and those are books.
Yes,
I mean, I can just see how this course is going to, you know, Unleash Your Big Beautiful Business course is a book.
Yes,
I mean, it just is. So when I'm writing that course, it's very clear to me that although I use a lot of video in the course, I can do that with the written word too. So I'm excited, and thank you for encouraging me. I really appreciate that.
Well, you can use the video to drive people to your book, and the book to drive people to your videos and your online. That's how it works now. Books are
really
in conversation with, you know, they're a way to.
Oh, they're in conversation. I like that.
Yeah, with your online presence, and you can use them back and forth. Don't put everything in your book. Just go to this link, you know, or download these worksheets, and then you can also do the color online, and you don't have to have that in the book and pay for that in the book, but you get that beautiful kind of material that the branding that you can do that you'll do in your book. But you know, it can be expensive if you do too much color, but you can do the color then on your web, and then people are downloading it. They can see the color, they can print it out in black and white, but you know, they get the feel of that.
I love that. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Wow. So well, thank you. I thank you. I think this was definitely serendipitous, because I really just have been feeling the pull to write something, and knowing that I was talking to you probably helped that too. That maybe there's some ideas there. So thank you very much for encouraging me.
You're welcome.
So tell us again where we can find you. What's your website?
LauraBushPhD.com. LAURA.
And you're going to have your freebie
PhD. Yes, I'll have it up sometime within the next 2 weeks, but it's not quite up yet because I just finished it, and I'm working on getting lead pages and such. So the best way to get it from me now is to email me at laurabushphd.com, and I will send it out to anybody.
I am emailing you that. I'm emailing you to get that from you.
That sounds great.
And I can be found at Megan@unleashed-inc.com. And then my website is unleashed-inc.com. And I've got a new course coming out called Unleash Your Big Beautiful Confidence, that I'm just kind of dipping my toe out in the world with it. So that's coming out, and it's really about helping women of all sizes and shapes feel confident about themselves so that they can build stronger, better, more successful businesses. So that's awesome. What I've got in the hopper right now. But again, I'm building lead pages, and all the technical stuff that has to go along with that is as much work, I think, as the actual writing of whatever it is you're writing.
Yes. It's fun.
Hey, Mindy. Sorry, we're just getting done, but Mindy joined. She's in our group, and I think that Allie is here too. If anybody would like, Allie or Mindy, anyone else would like to ask a question of either one of us. Mindy, I don't know if you know Laura, Mindy, they're in the Facebook group, but Laura helps people write books, and Mindy helps bloggers find authors to interview and write reviews about. So you two should definitely talk.
Bloggers to find people to interview about and write about?
Authors, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, and you two, I probably am not saying it right, but Mindy can probably set you straight.
I would be happy to be set straight.
Yeah. She said I'm close.
Okay. Good.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome,
This is
Megan.
so wonderful.
Yeah.
So good to meet you.
It's been fun, and I will see you online, I'm sure.
Awesome. All right. Well, take care, and good luck with your freebie and your group, and I will be paying very close attention to you.
Me too. Love you.
All right.
Bye, Megan.
Thank you. Bye-bye.